Is this going to be the year for Hall of Fame or the year the Hall of Fame comes calling for Daniel Alfredsson? We find out on June 27th, but there's this social media campaign that's trying to give him a big push right now. And it also engaged the Ottawa Senators in that they retweeted this Twitter post. It's a new Twitter site. It's called Alfie to the Hall, and it launched, I think, just yesterday. And they've got a big highlight reel of Alfie's big moments, and it was shared, like viewed 150,000 times, retweeted over 3,000 times in like a day. And among those retweets was the Ottawa Senators, which is meaningful because really, since that whole thing blew up between Eugene Melnyk and Daniel Alfredsson, which kind of led to his signing with Detroit, that's been a fractured relationship. It seemed to, this is the first time there's been any Hall of Fame support from Daniel Alfredsson from the organization. So that was kind of cool. What do you think of this this push in these last 2 weeks before the Hall of Fame is announced?
I don't know that lobbying will do you any good, but I will say this, it won't do you any harm. Like the more people that are aware of Daniel Alfredsson and his stats and his Hall of Fame resume, the better it is for you. I just keep comparing him to Matt Sundin, who was like a first ballot first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, why wasn't Daniel Alfredsson? He's not that worse. If you could even argue he was better. This whole talk about the Sedins are going in, no problem. If you've got the two Sedins and Roberto Luongo and Carolyn Ouellette, there's the four skaters, who the four players. Who else is going to get in this year? I just keep looking at it over and over again, thinking he's got a better resume than the one Sedin, that's for sure. And I'd like to think that he's better than the other as far as having waited 7 years. I think he deserves to be in ahead of them. And whatever lobbying happens is great. Did you notice the time of the first tweet from the new, what's the site called, or what's the Twitter handle?
Alfie to the Hall.
Yeah, did you see what time the tweet came out?
No, I didn't.
You didn't notice, did you?
11
in the morning.
Yeah, I figured as such. But I do think it factors in a little. I wouldn't have thought, for example, like go back to the 1992 expansion announcement. They had the city of Ottawa. They had the marching band that went down there, and there was. It's all about getting noticed, and if nobody's talking, if there's no buzz per se about Daniel Alfredsson leading into the Hall of Fame selection announcement, then I think that you're just more inclined to forget about him. He's not head and shoulders above everybody else in the field. There are other interesting names. You mentioned a few of them, but if there's no buzz at all, I think that you're going to struggle to get too much traction. And so I think it helps. I do think it helps. And there's some fans that were behind this thing. They actually realized that the Hall of Fame has a public submission process. And so they actually went through that. I don't know if that'll have anything to do with anything, but again, it's just another thing, planting a bug in somebody's ear about Daniel Alfredsson, that there's some excitement, that there's some hype. That will not be the be all end all, but I think it plays into the decision process, particularly when the decision is going to be a close one.
Yeah, just something out there that maybe puts him front of mind. When you're sitting around the table and you're talking about it. I don't know if all the guys around the table follow anything on Twitter, but they can't help but hear some things. And when you're sitting there talking about around the table, maybe it sways a couple people to vote yes. We'll find out shortly, right?
Yeah, but what a harbinger, though. Just the Sens retweeting that, it's just has not happened before. Alfie has been eligible for this since 2017, and he's been bypassed every time. And in the process of that, he's received no public team support until this retweet. And so I know it seems like a small thing. Like if you're not a social media person, you don't care about Twitter, it may seem completely pointless. But it is, to me, it tells me that there is now a fence that's either been torn down or mended or whatever. It feels like the first sign of welcoming the guy who was your captain for 13 years back to the organization.
Here. You're absolutely right. It's great to see, and let's hope it's a harbinger. Let's hope it's a first step toward more involvement and hopefully a full-time involvement from Daniel Alfredsson down the road.
Yep. And here's a quick look at the resume for those who aren't aware. Everybody's aware of Alfie's greatness who's listening to the Sens Nation podcast, but just to give you kind of a feel, we're not talking about lobbying for something that isn't deserved. Face of the franchise, probably the best player in Sens history, career records, goals, assists, and points for the franchise. He had 1,246 games played. That's one back at Chris Phillips. Led with 444 goals, 1157 for points. Sens captain, like I say, for 13 years, 14 international tournaments, 5 Olympic appearances. It goes on and on. Co-leader in the '07 Cup playoffs. So he's already in the International Hockey Hall of Fame. He will look just fine in the Hockey Hall of Fame.